Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome back to NPTEL online certification course on research methodology for planning and architectural studies. In our previous lecture, we have discussed in detail the difference between qualitative and quantitative research, because we researcher many a times get confused with the approach and where to use which method. So I hope that particular lecture gave you some insight, and if you have any such kind of questions on it, please do write us in the forum. So today at lecture number 4, we'll be discussing another such kind of common questions in our mind, that is research method versus research methodology. So let get started. So in this particular lecture, what we aim to learn, we'll try to understand what are research methods, categorization of research methods, example of research methods, what is research methodology, important components of research methodology, and most important part of this lecture, the comparison between research methods and research methodology. Then we summarize our discussion. So research methods, in our lecture number 2, we have discussed in detail the variety of research methods, starting from fundamental research to the applied research, action research to policy oriented research. So on the similar line here, it is something we can say the research method may be understood as those methods and techniques that are used for conducting research. So say I want to do a research to understand that what is tourist perception towards the cultural tourism in a city. So for such kind of case, that we have to go for selecting certain method. Say if I want to understand the perception open ended and just try to understand how people know about this particular term called cultural tourism and all, so possibly we go for a qualitative approach. And then if we identify, okay, these are few factors that can affect the cultural tourism, and then that can also make certain changes in the overall development of that particular city, we can also think of going for some quantitative research. So research methods refer to the instrument used in selecting and constructing research technique. Research techniques, on the other hand, refer to the instrument that are used in performing research operation, like making observation, recording data, techniques for processing and analyzing data. So all such steps are very important, like observation, recording, techniques for processing and analyzing, because many cases you cannot directly analyze your collected data. There should be some sort of process. So maybe you have to code the data to fit into certain algorithm, or maybe you have to go for some kind of data refinement process as well. So in this particular table, I would like to show you some of the examples of that. Say if the type of research is something which is based on some kind of library research, that through the document, so the method is investigation of historical records. So you go to a public library, or a library is very much specified in the historical records, and you go and then go through all those kind of old manuscript or the documents, books, etc., to understand the historical value of certain topic. Now techniques for this, the overall method, the investigation, but here in this case what techniques that you can use, maybe the content analysis, where you try to understand for a topic, like you just go through different kind of books, that what they are saying for that particular topic. There might be a common opinion, there might be some deviation. So through content analysis you can derive that part. Study of historical note, listening to the tape or film records. So it's not only the printed books, but sometimes through such kind of recordings, through video clips also you can get into that part. Now next thing is that which is much more of a primary data collection. So if the method is non-participant observation, that here we are not going to do the survey, we just observe and make a count or make certain observation. So techniques is observational behavioral scale. So in this case definitely we just observe that how people behave to a given situation. Suppose you just want to capture that how people cross a busy intersection, so you just observe it there, you are not asking anyone anything, but how they are crossing that particular intersection, you are capturing that. It may be the participant observation. In this case definitely you can go for recording that particular option. It may be mass observation, so recording the mass behavior, that it is like a particular, you can say that you know we call technically like social force model. Like if you find that somebody, the same problem that I'm referring, that crossing a particular intersection point, that you find that somebody is taking a lead to cross the road, even the signal is not green for pedestrian, the other will also follow to just make a queue and make a mass movement. So that also we can record. Mail questionnaire, in this case definitely the survey instrument that is distributed to the respondent through the mail or post. So this is though now getting very obsolete, but it has a value as well. It can be a open air. So in this case you use the attitude scale or projective techniques to capture that opinion of people. Personal interview, in this case we just schedule interview with the open or close ended questionnaire to the respondent. Focused group as a method, there we go for observation on a given experiment in and its effect in a small group. Group interview, where a group of people can come together to deliberate on this. It may be telephonic survey, where you can interact and try to understand the answers or opinion through telephonic interview. Case study, here also you can go for a cross sectional and longitudinal data collection, we'll come to that as well. Now other type is the laboratory research, where you can say small group study. So here you can also do some sort of experimental study as well. Like suppose you want to understand the psychological behavior of any color scheme in one interior. Like you can say that a study room, what should be the color of the wall or the other furnitures. So you can do some kind of lab experiment with certain kind of gadget, which can be some kind of sensor or something to capture their kind of cognitive ability or their socio-cultural, socio-physical parameters. Categorization of research method. So research method can be categorized into three main groups. First is based on collecting the data. Without data we cannot do much. Second focuses on statistical techniques which are used to establish the relationship. After collecting the data, we process the data and we analyze the data, and then we try to find out the relationship between the data and then how they are related. The third consists of those methods which are used to evaluate the accuracy of the result obtained. So in such cases we also need certain kind of test, that a result, a data, if you collect some information, the data you analyze and it will give you some findings, but what is the authenticity, what is the acceptance of that particular finding? So there should be some kind of check and test, that is something mentioned over here, so that we can say that this particular findings is acceptable in a scientific way, in a statistical way. Now in this case, like categorization of research methods are the strategies and processes deployed by researcher to gather, analyze and interpret the information in order to answer a research questions or a hypothesis. This will have another lecture where we'll discuss the research process, and within that one particular step is called research question. So that means, suppose today you enroll yourself into a PhD program or you are in a master's program, and then you want to do a research. So first of all you have to think of a broad idea, and then you have to find out the research need and the research gap. Now once you identify that, okay, this is the gap that people have not done research in this area, but which is very pertinent issue, and we have to solve it. So in such cases we also need to frame certain questions, and your whole research is nothing but to give answers to these questions, that how it is happening, is there any impact on this. So it may be a question or it may be hypothesis, that you just say that, okay, increase in population is liable for this kind of phenomenon, increase in pollution in a particular city. So then you need to prove it. Either you prove it or then you disprove it, that okay, no, this is not the case, that increase in population probably is not the root cause of this. So in such cases, the first we have to decide on how to collect the data. In that data collection, it can be qualitative data, it can be quantitative data, it can be through primary survey, it can be through secondary survey, it can be descriptive in nature where we just analyze that, or it can be just experimental setup that you can do. Once we have the clarity on data collection, next second step is very important, that is how to analyze the data, decision on how to analyze. And for that, quantitative data statistical analysis method are used to test the relationship between the variables. For qualitative data, thematic analysis is used to interpret the pattern and meaning of the data. Now example of research methods that already we have discussed, but again for this particular uh, lecture we are again recapping some of the things. Say quantitative research and qualitative research already we have discussed in detail in our previous lecture, so I am not going to discuss it again. We can also go for a content analysis where we go through all existing literature, case studies, we try to see whatever is mentioned for a particular phenomena or particular problem and try to understand the essence of it, and then we document it. So the content analysis is very useful tool to understand and identifying the research gap for any research proposal. Action research, where it is again very immediate implementable research, where you have a collaboration, where in action research we have the cyclic process of planning, actioning, then you go for observing, then you go for reflecting your result, and then so on. You can keep on doing this in a iterative way to find out the solution. Experimental design is equally important. If you are very much sure about your experimental design, if you can make it in a very proper way, so you may expect that your findings will be also very effective, and it can be also something very useful for timely research. Mixed method is something where we talked about quantitative and qualitative, but in few cases we also need to go for a mixed method, that to solve a particular objective maybe you can go for quantitative or qualitative, but in some approaches you can also go along with the mixed method. For mixed method, characterization and different aspect of it we'll discuss in a subsequent lecture. Then we can go for a secondary data analysis, where you don't need to go for a primary data collection, but you can do very well with your secondary information. But for that, only essential thing is that you have to be sure that whatever information that you have as a secondary information, that authenticity, because nowadays you can get information, if you google it, you will get many information of something, but in some approaches you can also go along with the mixed method, that to solve a particular objective maybe you can go for quantitative or qualitative, but in some approaches you can also go along with the mixed method. So if you search the current population, you will get certain data, and each second it is keep on changing. So these are all like some sort of projection or some kind of algorithm they have used. But to take that data into research, we have a proper data source and authenticity of that. So for Indian situation, like if you consider for such kind of study where it involves the population, total population of any study area, still we refer the census. And as because many a times we are conducting research at the middle of between two census document, we need to project. So the projection, there are different tools and techniques, that is okay, but you should not abruptly take the information or population data from any website or any such kind of unauthorized sources. Then we can also think for longitudinal study, where like with a temporal gap you are observing the same behavior. Say you are observing a pattern for a long time to see the changes and all, so you can do that. Correlational study, already I have mentioned that, where we try to establish the correlation between two variables, that how changing one will change the others. Now with that we move to the next thing, the definition, that is research methodology. So research methodology refers to a systematic theoretical framework. So this is very important, framework to solve a research problem. It may be understood as a science of studying how research is done scientifically. So it's not about a particular method, it is the overall program. Okay. Say for example, if we just read little more on that, that it encompasses the principle, technique, rules that researchers follow to design, conduct and analyze the study. It's not only selecting a particular statistical method for your research, it is the entire research process, like framing the problem, like then framing the objective wise different task, then the data sources and all. We'll discuss that. Research methodology provides the structure for collecting and interpreting data and ensure the research is conducted with accuracy, with reliability and validity. Research methodology not only focuses on the research method, because research method can be a subset of research methodology, but it also considers the logic behind the method selection, and also is explained the particular method, why it to be taken. So that is something many a times we get confused. We have so much of information, so many techniques available with us, but which one is really applicable, which data is much more applicable. So a proper methodology will give you that particular reasoning, and then it is some kind of you can say that overall structuring of your entire process. So essentially research methodology will answer you some of the questions as follows: why this research study has been undertaken. So this is something where you have to start with the problem statement, research problem. Then also you need to talk about the research gap into it. Suppose today you just realize that I want to do a research on the mental well-being, and then I try to understand the neighborhood, or maybe it is something high density, high rise neighborhood, and try to understand that the impact of those kind of high density neighborhood on the mental well-being of the people. So it is not that the idea may be like you feel that okay, this idea is very unique and new and very pertinent, but before claiming that, you need to also search that what kind of work has been done on similar line. It maybe it is not done for the locality that you are thinking of, but it has been done in other context, other cities, or maybe other countries. So that means also this research, the scope or maybe the acceptance of that research is going to be very narrow, because it is then becoming a very much case specific findings. But if it is something that okay, it's really a new thought process, and there is still exploration in going on, so then you can think that okay, it is having a high potential to take it forward. how research problem has been identified. So for that also there are different way that you can identify whether it is being stated by some of the organization and you take up that particular research project, okay, sponsored by some other agency, and then you work under that particular guideline. Or if it is something that through the field investigation, preliminary investigation, reconnaissance survey, that you are going to observe that okay, there is some kind of problem, and then that can be taken up as a research. Why the hypothesis has been formulated and how, that is there any role of hypothesis in your case. It may not be like always true that each research will have the hypothesis, but if it is there, that what is the basis of that, because I can end up with say 50 to 100 such kind of assumptions, but why only these 3 or 4? So that rationale should be there. What data have been collected, so what kind of data you require. It is not that okay, you collect all information and only you use some part of it, so then it is wastage of time and resources as well. What research method has been adopted, out of n number of research methods available with you, what methods you are going to take. Even in that, not only the methods, that within methods also we have discussed about the techniques, that which techniques of analyzing data, and then similar such kind of question that your research methodology will answer. Important components of research methodology, it will definitely give some kind of clarity on research philosophy. It states the objective of the research that will be studied through empirical observation or measurement, but sometimes it may be not the empirical one, it can be fundamental research as well, it may be conceptual research as well, but there should be a research philosophy into it. Then next is very important, that is the research design. It involves the monitoring of variables and studying the cause and effect relationship. Strategy, it involves the collection and analysis of numerical and non-numerical data, that which data is required, then identify the source of data, that okay, this data I cannot get it from anywhere, I have to go for a primary survey. Then also a methodology will also give you some sort of direction. If you think on that, do we really require to go for primary data collection for my research, or it is something that I can do from the secondary analysis as well. Say something that we want to do on the spatial pattern or something, okay, where things are available maybe from the satellite image, some of built form, or land use, land cover thing and all. So for that, probably primary data collection is not that mandatory, right? Literature review, this is very important part, and many a times we neglect this part, and that's why like many a times we encounter a problem that after certain progress of our research we find that okay, a similar paper I find just get which is similar to my work. So better that it provides a foundation for understanding of existing knowledge, identifying the gap and justifying this. If 100 people are saying that it is very important, so there is a consciousness that okay, it is important. Or else if some research is already being done in a huge manner, so probably doing the similar thing may not add much value to the body of literature. Sampling technique, this is also important, that if it is a sample based data collection, what sampling technique that you are going to use. Data collection method, because it will also depend on the method, whether you go for a face to face data collection or remote data collection, etc. Then instrument and tools, what method that you are going to use, so that is also required. So this is also part of the research methodology. And then obviously the data analysis and techniques. Along with that also it will give you a overall holistic approach, okay, starting from your problem identification to the final solution, right? So after that analysis, it is on the data representation and reporting, because many a times that maybe we have done an excellent work but we fail to present it properly. So that is also something very much painful for a researcher. So here actually, this is also a component of a good research methodology. Validity and reliability of the data. Validity refers to the extent which the study measures what is intended to measure, and while reliability refers to the consistency. So if it is something like a experimental work, it is not that in the first experiment whatever result you find and you just report it. So you have to do some kind of validation of it. But when you go for a subjective research also, in some kind of cases you have to also validate with taking different examples or taking a temporal gap between the study, so that it is not that today I ask a person that whether you like it or not, and answer is okay, that person liked it, and tomorrow you'll survey and then you find that okay, it's not liking it. So that means the representation and other thing, the validity is questionable sometimes, so that you need to check. Timeline and resources, very important for all of us, that we have to understand that okay, say I want to do something on environment, some research on environment. So environment is a big picture. Under environment, what you want to do, suppose you want to do with something like air quality. Now in air quality also there may be different directions. The impact of air quality on the respiratory disease, impact of air quality on the pollution, and the visibility, impact of air quality on the other aspect, effects on the children, or effects on the play or the outdoor activity. So there may be many such ways. So as a researcher, we also need to understand that when we are performing a research, it should have a definite goal. So in this case, if you just think of something like infinity, I can do everything, so probably that will be little bit overestimation. So something which is tangible, or which is actually doable, like which can be manageable within a time of say whatever time that you can think, that you can give in your research in a standard like say 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of a PhD degree, or maybe if it is a short term research of say 1 year or 2 years, accordingly you have to define your scope. That is very important. And accordingly you also need to plan the resources, the timeline, that that I'll complete this by this month, I'll complete in next 2 weeks, unless otherwise there will be some delay. Ethical consideration, because this is something related to the inducting part, like participant into your study, the ethical approval and all. Data storage and security, this is something very important. You keep on saving your data in multiple location, because sometimes at the middle of your research you will find that my data is lost, so that will be a huge problem. So in all cases, like a proper methodology is required. The way we make say something like a to-do list, that these are the activity we do, and then you stitch that after that we'll do it, and this will lead to this, if this will happen then this. So like that we make the whole process. Now coming to the most interesting part of this lecture, to just head to head difference between research method and methodology, where the method is specific technique or procedure used by researcher to collect and analyze and interpret the data, where the methodology is a theoretical framework. Where method is a practical step and process employed in a study to answer research questions that is there in this research. Where methodology includes the philosophy of research, rationale for certain choosing the methods, and underlying assumption for guiding the research. Where the method is much more on the how of the research process, much more of the quantification, where methodology is much more like why this method, okay, what will happen next, so why and what type of questions. Where method aims to are based on finding a solution to a research problem, where research methodology aims using the correct procedure to find solution to a research problem. Method you later stage of the research process, where this methodology is required at the beginning so that you will be on track. Yeah, so as I already discussed that research methods are the subset of the research methodology, that it will come at the later stage when you have collected the information and then you try to understand the phenomena. Where research methodology is a comprehensive and holistic approach. Now, again, if we say that as because it is the subset, so the scope is very narrow. Like once you pick up one a particular method, it will have certain ability, it will only solve certain research questions, and it will only analyze certain data type. Where methodology scope is broad because it is not only the methods that you are talking about, but it also talks about the overall strategy, data collection strategy, sampling strategy, sample size calculation procedure, then interpreting the data and reporting it. So with that, let us summarize what we have understood. So again, we have discussed little bit on the research methods that are there, their characteristics, different categorization of the research methods, examples that we have also seen, different type of methods. Then we discussed about research methodology, and then you have important components of research methodology, and then finally we discussed that comparison between methods and methodology, where methods are subset of the methodology, where methodology is the holistic approach to conduct your entire research, where research method is useful to analyze a particular data set, okay, where it involves different techniques that by which you can solve it. And research methods also includes different types of methods, starting from your longitudinal study, quantitative, qualitative. So this is a part of your entire methodology of your research. Hope that things are clear to you. So with that, we'll move to our next lecture, which is the common issues and challenges in planning and architectural research. That what I observed in during my research career so far, and I have seen my students and other research scholar. So this will be some sort of documentation of that. So with that, thank you once again for joining the course. See you soon. Thank you.